Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry site, and today we're here with Dr. Tom D'Alfonso. He is the Worldwide Animal Nutrition Focus Area Director at the U.S. Soybean Export Council. Thanks for being with me again today, Tom.
Hi, Sarah. It's great to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
Sounds great. And today, Tom and I are going to be talking turkey. And so we're going to dive right into our questions because we've got a lot to cover, but this is a little different topic for us than what we've covered in the past. So I'm really excited to cover this new content. Turkey producers are operating on long production cycles with a lot of capital tied up in the bird. When nutritionists are making feed decisions for turkeys, why is the conversation about ingredient consistency even more consequential here than it might be in broilers or layers, Tom?
Sure. Well, the thing to remember about turkeys is that they're growing over long periods of time. And when they reach processing age just before harvest, it's important for them to be uniform because there's limited space at that time. They're eating. Their body mass is growing. The barn is full, and what you want are the animals to be uniform for a couple of reasons. One, so that they have equal access to feeder space and water, and two, so that when they reach the processing plant, they are within the target weight range for those birds. They could be sold as whole birds. They could be sold as cut up parts, and having them more uniform means more revenue.
Breast meat yield is the primary revenue driver in commercial turkey production. Can you walk producers through what happens in the feed, specifically the quality of the protein source, connects to what ends up in the yield report at the processing plant?
Right, very good. So first, let me start with that protein source. It should be soybean meal derived from U.S. soy. And the reason is that it's highly digestible in those essential amino acids that are critical for that breast meat yield. The methionine, threonine, tryptophan, lysine are all in great proportions for the needs of the turkey to produce that large breast meat yield that brings the highest source of revenue, as you mentioned. Also, the consistency. You can rely on this ingredient to have those nutrients that are needed, the essential amino acids, as well as the metabolizable energy. And for all that reason, adopting a preference for soybean meal made from U.S. soy brings the biggest payback for turkey producers.
Turkey operations often talk about flock uniformity at processing as a major value driver. How does the consistency of soybean meal quality over a 16 to 20 week grow out affect whether a flock comes in tight or variable at the end?
Right, very good. Well, it's always good to get a flock off to the right start. So, starting with a well balanced starter diet, there could be a dozen different formulas that are used to produce the turkey, and you're expecting the nutrient composition to be as formulated. That's because as the animals grow, if they start off and they're less uniform, that lack of uniformity spreads over time. They become less and less uniform. And so, what's important in turkey production is to get them to the processing plant at target weight, because in that weight range, they receive the highest revenue per pound or kilogram of turkey meat produced. So that's why it's important to have a consistent ingredient such as soybean meal derived from U.S. soy.
So it's sort of cumulative. If you have problems in the beginning, it just continues to grow, right? Or to become a bigger problem.
That's right. You're feeding one diet to a whole flock of animals, and so you can't precisely feed each animal. So what you want are for the animals to be as uniform as possible, so that when you make the diet change and you have that target nutrient composition, it's more matching the animal's needs. Whereas if you have a variable flock, then you're not meeting the needs of all the animals. You're either underformulating or overformulating the needs, and that's why this effect of variability in animal size is particular for turkey producers, because over time that difference can get bigger and bigger.
Excellent. Turkey diets are phase fed with very different amino acid targets from poult starter through finisher. What does superior amino acid digestibility in soybean meal derived from U.S. soy mean practically for a nutritionist managing that phase feeding program? And where does variability in digestibility do the most damage, Tom?
Right. So, as you mentioned, the feeding program is going to be most economical when it more precisely meets the needs of the animal, and when you're changing the diet in the phase feeding program, having the primary source of the essential amino acids, those digestible amino acids, and the metabolizable energy be consistent is very important. Now, the reason I keep saying soybean meal derived from U.S. soy is because soybean meal derived from other origins, particularly tropical climates such as Brazil, require mechanical drying. That can cause heat damage. We've seen U.S. soy all over the world have 5 times less damage than that coming from Brazil. And that damage comes from the heat damage that I mentioned. It comes from immature beans that are green in color, which also have lower digestibility. So these various types of damage that we see from beans from Brazil causes less digestibility of those essential nutrients. And this is important in turkey production because you're formulating a diet and you're expecting those nutrients to be in there, but it's really the digestibility and the consistency of those nutrients that are most important to get to the animal.
There's research showing that amino acid digestibility differences between soybean meal origins, documented in both broiler chickens and turkey poults, translates into meaningful growth and feed efficiency differences. How would you characterize the magnitude of that effect for turkey producers specifically, and what does it mean at the scale for a commercial operation, Tom?
Right. So we've seen research showing differences in feed conversion of more than 3 points. In fact, between 5 to 10 points in some cases of feed conversion. This is enormous feed cost differences. And it
Right?
all comes back to that digestibility of the essential amino acids and the metabolizable energy. So when you have a source of the digestible amino acids and metabolizable energy, such as soybean meal derived from U.S. soy, you can rely on those nutrients being digestible, being consistent, and the animal producing to its genetic potential to get the most revenue, the most profit, and the least feed costs.
And 5 to 10 points is significant, Tom. That's a lot. That's a big wide range, right?
We did some estimates of poultry producers, various types of poultry, producing 20,000 metric tons of feed per month. And for operations of that size, it's millions of dollars. I think it was $3 million a year in extra profit because less feed is required. More of the poultry meat, in this case turkey meat, reached the processing plant within target weight. There was higher revenue, lower feed costs, and making that choice of that essential ingredient, the soybean meal, by adopting a preference for soybean meal made from U.S. soy when compared to performance from Brazilian soybean meal had enormous economic consequences.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. So, in production cycle, in a production cycle that runs nearly 5 months for heavy toms, small differences in average daily gain and feed conversion ratio compound significantly. How should turkey producers think about the cumulative economic impact of consistently superior digestibility across the entire grow out versus a cheaper ingredient that underperforms week after week? This falls in line with what we were just talking about, right, Tom?
It does. And so this may be repeating a bit, but as you said, it's a long grow out cycle.
Right.
Practically as long as pigs. It's several months, and so in many ways you're planning the last feeding period. What is that target weight for them to go to the processing plant? What are the nutrient requirements of the animal at that stage? And you work backwards and you say, well, what are the nutrient requirements to get this genetic um, uh, potential of growth and feed efficiency at each stage leading up to that weight at the processing plant and the assumptions about the amount of feed that will be consumed. So metabolizable energy affects feed consumption. And so having a consistent source of metabolizable energy means that you can more predictably plan that phase feeding so that the animals consume more predictably. You balance the diet on the essential amino acids, and you do this over a long period of time. That's pretty tricky to do if you have a highly variable source of that critical ingredient, namely soybean meal, unless it's consistent and highly digestible like US soy.
Excellent. And our last question here is, US soy carries a sustainability story that matters increasingly to retail and food service buyers downstream of the turkey operation. How does that sustainability credential connect to the business opportunities your customers are trying to capture?
Right. Well, the sustainability practices of the U.S. soy farmer exist because they are family-owned farms. They're passing on the farm from one generation to the next. These multi-generational farmers know the conditions of their soil. They minimize the amount of inputs that are required. They maximize the organic material in the soil to produce a consistent, high-quality product, namely U.S. soy. So it's those sustainability practices that lead to the consistency and the digestibility. Now, if you are a poultry producer, a turkey producer, and you're marketing your product, you can tell the consumer, you can tell your shareholders that if you adopted a preference for US soy, you've lowered your carbon footprint. You can market your product as fed with US soy.
Great.
And all this provides customer loyalty to your brand, confidence from the shareholders that you're running a good business. And when consumers see that businesses are run well, they have confidence in the quality of that turkey that they're going to be eating. So by adopting a preference for sustainable US soy, you can lower the cost of feed, improve animal performance, and increase your brand recognition for having done so by adopting a sustainable US soy.
Very good. Well, thank you, Tom, so much for all the information. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks again. And if you'd like more information, you can go to usec.org. And this is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry site.